Gretch, you know I am really trying to be healthier and I am succeeding, I want to say. But even though I'm trying to be healthier, that does not mean that I want to spend a ton on groceries. But what I have found is that at Whole Foods Market, you can save every day, even without a sale.
You can find these great prices in-store and online. Shop Whole Foods Market on Amazon and get free pickup and convenient delivery on all your wellness journey essentials. Terms apply. Save on your wellness routine with great everyday prices at Whole Foods Market.
Let's talk about a small thing that can make a big difference if you have diabetes, the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor. It's amazing how the sensor gives you real-time glucose readings so you can see the impact of every meal and activity to make better choices.
The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help you live life with diabetes on your terms. This is progress. You can try it for free at freestylelibre.us. Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Lemonada.
Hello, we're here for More Happier, a podcast where we get more of the happier podcast. It's the weekend. Join us as we kick back and get more happiness in our daily lives. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hi, Gretchen.
Today we'll talk about what to expect from the people around us when we do something creative, and we'll explore another interesting, though perhaps slightly silly, question about eating habits. But first, something making us happier. Elizabeth, what is making you happier?
Well, Gretchen, I am loving the continued commentary about our change from what's making us more happier to what's making us happier. We had decided that we would change that up because it seemed to be irritating a lot of people that we weren't grammatically correct. But then we've heard from so many other people who said, well, I liked that.
Yes.
You shouldn't feel that you have to change something. Someone reminded you, Gretchen, they said, remember, a strong voice repels as well as attracts.
Yes, that's one of my secrets of adulthood. Yeah.
So it's just interesting that, we also realize people speak up about things they don't like, but nobody's going to write in and say, oh, I love that you say what's making you more happier, or are you more happier? So I love that people care.
I love
first and foremost.
Yes. Well, because we had decided, look, we've had our fun with this little joke and it's getting on people's nerves, so let's give it up. And then all these other people say, oh, well, no, it's fun. So listen, should we pick one or the other, or should we mix it up, or is mixing it up just going to annoy everybody?
Good question. I don't know. I think we should stick with happier for a while because we've settled on that.
Yeah.
And then maybe at a certain point, we'll go back.
Yes.
For a period of time. But I don't think we should go every other week. That's going to get way too confusing.
Right. But I do think anybody who is wondering, how are these two people who seem otherwise sensible, why are they saying something wildly ungrammatical? We were doing that on purpose.
Yes.
You may have disagreed about whether it was funny, but that was purposeful. So rest assured that it's not just sheer lack of grammatical knowledge. Okay. So let's do it the new way just to change things up, and then we can revisit it. But it is nice that a lot of people wrote to tell us that they liked it. So that's nice.
Yes. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
How about you, Gretch? What's making you happier?
Well, this is also something related to listeners, which is, we get all these emails from listeners and things on social media. And what I love is that people have so many professions. You know that Richard Scarry, what do people do all day? It's just like, I just don't have an imagination big enough to think of all the jobs that people have. I love hearing about people's jobs. Now, I wish I had been clever enough to keep a running list of all the interesting jobs, which I have not done. But I do feel like I always appreciate it when people make a note. And especially sometimes I ask for people from proverbs of their profession. So that's really interesting. But then even a lot of times, Elizabeth, we'll talk about something and people say, oh, well, this comes up in my world in a kind of slightly different way. I feel like it's making my understanding of the complexity and richness of the world deeper, and I appreciate that.
And I do find it interesting how we all grapple with the same issues pretty much, no matter what our job is. Sarah and I find that all the time on Happier in Hollywood, that we'll talk about something that to us feels very specific to Hollywood. But then someone who's, a forest ranger will write in and say, oh, I deal with this all the time. And you just realize humans are really why we all have issues anywhere in our lives. And humans are the same wherever you go.
Well, that's like Eleanor giving advice as a college freshman. It's like, this is probably useful to anybody because good advice sort of works.
Yes.
Works for everybody. It's really true. So listen, this is sort of a related question, but as a writer in Hollywood, you are often writing in settings that from the outside, when I watch it, it feels very realistic. It feels very complete. There's slang. People have different jobs. They're walking into a building and it looks kind of the way I would think it would work. How do you know that? I'm always sort of like, I know Elizabeth. I know she doesn't know anything about XYZ world. How do you prepare for that? Or is it just human nature is human nature and you can just figure out how an office works? How much research do you feel like you need to do?
Well, of course, it depends on what it is. I mean, I feel like in a procedural, like a cop show, we're sort of always researching that because there are so many of them. And Sarah and I did do a ride-along with 2 female cops when we started The Shield, which was fascinating.
Oh, interesting.
And we'll read books about homicide detectives and police officers and that kind of thing.
Right.
Also, if it's a law show, you'll definitely want to have at least one lawyer on staff to give you that insight.
Yeah.
Same with a hospital. You want doctors on staff. If it's something, like I just mentioned, a forest ranger, you might try to call and talk to somebody who is in that profession or read about it. Of course, a lot of it really is just imagination because a lot of it is you want to just get into the heads of the people. And it's so much more about the dynamics than it is about the specifics. Now, something interesting, though, Gretchen, is even more than for us as the writers, I think for the people who do set design, costumes, that kind of thing, they really have to research. Props. Let's say you're doing a morgue, you're the set designer, you're going to go look at a lot of photos, look at the equipment, look at the lights, all of that. So yeah, any set on TV is going to be a very exact replica of what a real thing would look like. It's just that all the parts may not work.
I think when I was clerking on the Court of Appeals, there had been some big actor, somebody like Brad Pitt or something. Somebody had come through and had just watched the people working, how they walked around the office. And I remember, because, I love the TV show The Office so much, Jenna Fisher, who played Pam, had been a receptionist. And so she knew how to sit at a receptionist desk and how to answer the phone and kind of how to doodle on a sticky pad and just how to hold yourself and do that. What is that called? Business? Isn't that what they call it? Just
business is what you're doing sort of in addition to acting. So yeah, what's going on while you're talking.
Right. You're unloading a dishwasher or you're
clicking a pen or
Right. Because there are these things that if it's familiar to you, you don't even think anything of it. But if you're trying to capture the spirit of something, it would be really important to have that. Because I think people are really interested in different professions. I mean, I think a lot of listeners to Happier in Hollywood do not themselves ever intend to actually get a job in Hollywood. It's just an interesting profession. And it's kind of all the problems are especially large and dramatic in Hollywood. So that makes it interesting. But I like reading about just about anything anybody does gets interesting.
Well, that's why you and I like books like the book about how grocery stores work. We just enjoy knowing these things, or heads in beds.
Yeah, just getting that knowledge. Absolutely.
Okay, Gretch, coming up, there's something you've been meaning to tell me, but first, this break.
This new year, why not let Audible expand your life by listening? Explore over 1 million audiobooks, podcasts, and exclusive Audible originals that'll inspire and motivate you. Just open the app and tap into your well-being with advice and insight from leading influencers, experts, and professionals. Whatever your focus or interest, there's a listen for it on Audible. You'll find titles on better health, including personal fitness, nutrition, and relaxation.
Yeah, Gretch, I am all about Audible. I cannot get enough audiobooks. Right now, I'm listening to Colored Television by Danzy Senna, and I am obsessed with it. Plus, on Audible, you can find insight and expert advice on health, relationships, career, finance, so much more. Start listening today. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/happier. Dell Technologies is celebrating with anniversary savings on their most popular tech. For a limited time only, save on select next-gen PCs like the XPS 16 powered by Intel Core, Ultra processors, and more. Unleash more possibilities with cutting-edge systems, our most advanced features, and great prices. Plus, curate your dream setup with deals on select monitors, mice, and more must-have electronics and accessories.
When you shop online at Dell.com/deals, you'll have access to state-of-the-art technology to match your forward-thinking spirit and free shipping on everything. Anniversary savings await you for a limited time only at Dell.com/deals. That's Dell.com/deals.
Okay, Gretch, we are back. There's something you've been meaning to tell me. What is it?
Okay, so I've been meaning to tell you, and I've also been meaning to ask you. Okay, I want to know your thoughts on this. So in episode 404 of Happier in Hollywood, you talked about whether your son Jack and Sarah's daughter Violet listen to your podcast.
That's right. And if you missed that episode, the answer is no, they do not. Nor does Adam. He does not listen to the podcast. I think he's gone to a couple of our live shows.
Yes.
And those are the only podcast episodes he's listened to. How about you?
No. Jamie, my husband, and Eliza and Eleanor, my daughters, they do not listen. So this is what I want to ask/tell you. I think that if you are a creative person, you should not expect your friends and your family to be interested in what you create. They can be interested in what you create, and that is very nice if they're interested in what you create. But I think it is better not to assume that they will be interested in what you create. What do you think?
I think that's very true. Of course, because I am in Hollywood, almost everybody I know has a book, a TV show, a movie.
Yeah.
I do often try to watch, read, see as much as I can.
Yeah.
But yes, it can't be expected. It just can't. And I don't expect anyone to watch my show whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think mom and dad are probably the only people who I kind of assume will watch something, and maybe Adam's parents. That's probably it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking this because a friend of mine had written a memoir and, was in a draft, and she was very sad because her husband didn't want to read it. She kept saying, "Have you read it? Have you read it?" And he kept putting it off. And I said, "Oh, but Jamie doesn't read anything that I write." And she was floored by that. And I have to say, I was sort of like, well, I don't really expect it. And so I said to Jamie, is it that you don't read it because there's just too much of it, which frankly, there is a lot. Like if you were doing everything that I do, it's a lot. Or is it the kind of feeling that you get when your second grader is doing a ballet solo and you're kind of like, oh, I'm cheering for them, but it's also sort of like, awkward. Nerve-wracking. Or, because I write so much about my personal life, is it somehow weirdly, strangely behind the curtain? Like, what's going on? And in typical Jamie fashion, it's like, it's kind of all of those things. So I'm like, okay, that doesn't give me that much insight. But I just think that it never occurred to me to expect that. And so I wasn't disappointed. And I think it might be that people would expect it and be disappointed and not realize that this is actually quite common for people to experience.
Yes. Although I think there's two different types of people. There's also the kinds of people, well, in a couple anyway, where they're very involved in each other's work.
Well, that's true
and
too.
They're an inherent part of the process. And for instance, because I have Sarah, I don't depend on Adam whatsoever for my Hollywood type work, although I'll run a question by him or something. But he doesn't have a writing partner, so he much more often talks to me about what he's working on just because he wants a sounding board. But if he was on a show, for instance, I I might watch his episodes, but I very well might not.
Right.
And I don't know what that is. I mean, I think it depends. Now, look, if you're someone who is in a totally different type of industry and you have a thing that you're doing, which is a big deal, like you've written a book and you're someone who that's totally not part of your world, I think it's much more likely that people will read it.
Or if it's your first.
Yes, the first is different. Everybody watches the first, often because you're having a party about
or
it.
reads the first. Right. The first is special. But I think sometimes people, they get a certain kind of response the first time, and then they just think, well, this is how it's going to be.
Well, look, I mean, if you're a lawyer, I don't think you expect people to read your briefs, right? Or your insurance papers or, whatever. So I don't think we should be expecting everybody to consume our material.
Well, it's funny. A famous writer friend, I won't say his name because I don't know that he would want everybody to know that he said this, but he said to me years ago, he said, look, your friends won't buy your books and they won't come to your events. And the fact is, sometimes they buy your books and sometimes they come to your events, and that's good. But it was helpful for me to be like, this guy is a hugely famous writer.
Yes.
If anybody is going to have somebody buy his books and come to his events, it's this guy. And if this guy is saying they don't do it, it was just very reassuring to me to realize this is just useful for people to know. And then I think also sometimes people will create something thinking, oh, well, my children will want this. I'm going to pour out my heart. I'm going to write down my memories, and it's going to be this huge thing. And then my children will love it. When I hear that, I'm like, they might, but they might not. Sometimes children aren't interested in their parents in that way. There seems to be some kind of, I don't know exactly how to characterize it, but I do feel like sometimes children don't want to know the inner psychic drama of their parents necessarily. So again, maybe they are, and that could be wonderful. And I'm sure there's many examples where that's a real gift. But I sometimes want to say to people, but don't feel hurt. Don't feel like your child doesn't truly love you or care for you if they aren't interested in reading your 250-page memoir of whatever, because they just may not want to.
It's an interesting psychological question, and I think there's different answers for different people.
Sure.
Kind of like Jamie's saying, it's a little bit of all. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people just don't want to read anything that's given to them.
Yeah, it's true.
Or watch anything that
Yes.
people tell them to watch.
That's true.
I think some people feel nervousness for somebody they love. I think other people
Yes.
resent their time being called upon. So I think there's all these reasons.
Or it's also, oh my gosh, I got Gretchen Rubin or Liz Fierro. I got her all the time. I don't need to sign up for more.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I think that surprises people. Now, Gretchen, of course, this is begging a question for you, which is Jamie, your husband, started a podcast.
Yeah.
First of all, tell people about it, but are you going to listen? Have you listened?
Well, it's interesting. I was just thinking about this as you were talking about not having somebody to bounce off of the way you do. So yeah, Jamie just started a podcast. He just started a podcast, so it's brand new. It's called After Hours with Jamie Rubin. He's doing it with Vital City. So it's all about New York City politics and policy. My husband, Jamie, is deep into sort of the issues of cities in New York City. And if that's the kind of thing you like, you will love it. And if it's not your kind of thing, it's not for you. It's sort of like congestion pricing. Let the fur fly. But anyway, it's super exciting. And he definitely wanted me to listen. And I think part of it is that he has a producer that he's working with and people helping him who are terrific. But it's kind of like the way you have Sarah and I have you, he has me. And so I was sort of more involved in it than he was involved in what we've been doing. And of course, our family, it's like I feel like mom and dad are going to start a podcast here because both my daughters had podcasts. Eliza starting at 16, and Eleanor had people my age. And I listened to those and loved them. I did listen with a little bit of apprehension because there is that thing like, oh, here's my child creating something and what is it going to be?
Now, I will say, Gretch, on that, I listened to both of those because I think you're dying for like more insight into younger people, into your daughters, your nieces, your nephews. So that makes sense to me.
Right.
I love to hear what they're thinking. Recently, my niece Elena has been DJing at UCSD. And it's so fun just to hear what she says on the radio. Right. It's like an insight.
Yes.
So I think that's a little bit different.
Yeah, that is interesting. And so, as you're saying, there's many factors that might play into it. And I do feel like the more you are involved in creation, the less people feel obligated. Because this is like you being a lawyer or you being an insurance agent. I don't feel like as a friend, I have to do it. But then, of course, there are the people who buy every single thing, show up at every single thing, read everything, respond to everything. And that, of course, we appreciate that deeply. And
Yes,
I
we
know
do.
who all those people are, and it's wonderful.
Yes.
But it's just sometimes people have said things to me, and I'm like, it's very common for people close to you not to engage in the way that you might expect them to. And so just don't be surprised. Set your expectations in a way that won't leave you feeling hurt, because it's not uncommon.
Okay, Gretchen, what is this week's spotlight on a tool?
Okay, well, speaking of things that I create that some members of my family consume and others do not, and yet I think it is super great and excellent and very well worth their time and everybody's, is my 5 Things Making Me Happy newsletter. You can sign up at happiercast.com/newsletter. It's free. It's a weekly newsletter where it's 5 things making me happy. It's one of the great joys of my life to gather the things for this, because they're just little things that make me happy. And it's always just very fun to think about and to be looking for those things out in the world. So again, that's happiercast.com/newsletter. I have more than 1.4 million subscribers at this point. Elizabeth, can you believe that?
Amazing. As someone who's recently started a Substack, Gretchen, 1.4 million is incredible. And I am one of your consumers of that newsletter.
You are such, as I say, you are such a good sister.
Okay, Gretch, coming up, there's something you've been meaning to ask me, but first, this break.
We all want to help set up our children for success, but sometimes a child is struggling at school with a specific subject or needs help with homework, and we don't quite know how to help. IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. IXL is designed to help them really understand and master topics in a fun way with positive feedback. My daughter, Eleanor, really struggled with math. She had to do a lot of extra work to catch up, and IXL is exactly the kind of thing that would have helped her catch up and master difficult material.
IXL is used in 26 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Happier with Gretchen Rubin listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/happier. Visit IXL.com/happier to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Gretch, you know I am really trying to be healthier, and I am succeeding, I want to say. But even though I'm trying to be healthier, that does not mean that I want to spend a ton on groceries. Yeah. What I have found is that at Whole Foods Market, you can save every day, even without a sale. So I look for the yellow low price signs that will call out some of their most competitively priced items. And that can be chicken, ground beef, and so much more, so that I know like I'm getting the best food, but I am not paying through the nose.
Right. It's the combination we all want, which is really good prices and also really good quality products. Their house brand, 365 by Whole Foods Market, has tons of essentials at daily low prices as well. You can find these great prices in-store and online. Shop Whole Foods Market on Amazon and get free pickup and convenient delivery on all your wellness journey essentials. Terms apply. Save on your wellness routine with great everyday prices at Whole Foods Market. Okay, Alyssa, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. A while back, I asked you sort of perhaps unexpected question, which is, when you eat, you, Elizabeth, do you eat one thing at a time and then another thing at a time? Or do you have a bite, or do you just sort of follow your heart? How do you eat? And we talked about it. I learned something about you that I didn't really know. And people have just been so interested in this question. I think it's just one of these ordinary parts of our everyday behavior that when you start thinking about it, you're like, I didn't realize that people had all these sort of quirky ways that they went about it.
Yes, people are very engaged. It's kind of like the dishwasher question about how you load the dishwasher. It's just something people find interesting that's quite mundane.
Yes. Well, and the thing that's funny to me is you would think it would be very noticeable, but in fact, it's often not noticeable. And so now I'm paying much more attention to seeing people's. In fact, it was interesting when I was writing Life in Five Senses. I read a fact, and I have so much trouble paying attention. That's why I wrote the book Life in Five Senses. But they made an observation that I've always wanted to pay attention to when I go to restaurants, and then I always forget, but I will offer it up to listeners, which is apparently it's quite common when people sit down at a restaurant for them to rotate their plate. Now, you just kind of reach out and just adjust your plate. Now, I do this because I feel like for me, there's like feng shui of how I want to be oriented towards the dishes on my plate. And when I read that, I'm like, that definitely rings true for me. But year after year, I've kind of always forget at a restaurant to pay attention. But maybe here, I will say this aloud, and maybe that will help me remember the next few times I go to a restaurant to pay attention. Is this truly a widespread behavior? Now, this is not the question, Elizabeth. This is like a preview question. But do you do that? And then I'll get to my main question.
I don't think I've ever done that.
Really?
I might move silverware, but that's because it's in the middle of the plate or something, and then you put it to the side. I never rotate my plate.
So they put down the plate. You do not feel like, okay, I want to rotate that so my salad is on the left side.
I don't think so. But you know what? I'll check. Maybe I do.
Okay. So follow-up question to come on that. Okay, but here's the other eating-related question, just because people seem to be as interested in this as I am. Okay, let's say you are in a grocery store or a drugstore, someplace like that, but probably a grocery store. Would you open a food item in the grocery store and start eating from it before you checked out? Now, of course, you are going to pay. So this is not a question of like, okay, I'm going to eat this thing up and then hide the wrapper and walk out and not pay. It's just, would you open up, I don't know, a box of crackers or a bag of nuts or something and eat from it before paying? Would you do that?
I don't think I've ever done that.
No.
And I would feel very awkward. Now, I also wouldn't enjoy eating in the grocery store, so I wouldn't have a motivation to do it.
Yeah, and is that because it feels dirty, or your hands feel dirty, or you feel self-conscious, or it just would never occur to you?
Here's the thing. If it's something that I would open and eat in a grocery store, I have to assume it's something yummy, right? It's not going to be like a stick of asparagus.
Right, okay, yeah.
And if I'm eating something yummy like candy or chips, I want to enjoy it fully. And to me, that's sitting down, watching a housewives show, something like that. So I'm not going to want to waste it walking through the grocery store, which is a chore.
Now, see, I thought that you might say that you've sometimes had to do this because of the diabetes, that you were like, oh my gosh, I need something quick. Let me run in here and open up a bag of M&Ms or Starbursts. I know that Starbursts are something that you often eat. But is it always that you're so careful about having snacks that if you need it, you just pick the snack out of your bag?
Yes, I think I always have something. But that is the one time, if that occurred, where I would do that.
Right.
I have at a restaurant asked for bread. Say, could I get some bread immediately because I need to eat something?
And then did you rotate your bread plate?
Yeah.
No, well, the thing that's funny about this is there was a few times, I think, in childhood, because, I feel like every day we went to the grocery store with our mother. I'm sure we did not, but in my recollection, this was something that we did constantly.
Yes, milligrams.
Yes, milligrams. Oh gosh, milligrams. And I feel like a few times our mother did this and it made me very nervous, which is completely understandable because as an upholder, I would be very nervous about this. And then I'd be like, but I plan to pay, but what if they come after us? And like, what if we actually, it just feels like a rule that's being broken. It's not the kind of thing that our mother would ordinarily do. So I imagine it was probably something like she hadn't had time for lunch. And so she was just starving. So she opened something and took a few bites. But it probably only happened once or twice. And yet I still remember it all these years later. I remember the rows of candies. I was talking about this with a friend because she's like, oh, I do this all the time. It doesn't matter. And I was like, okay, interesting. Because if you're paying for it, I don't know. What was she doing? It was something where you didn't use your hands. Because I do think like you might feel like your hands are dirty if you're like sticking your hand into a box of Triscuits or something. And now I can't remember what it was, but interesting.
The little things we do.
The little things we do. I'll be very interested to hear what listeners say. Oh, but here's the thing. Eating grapes or something like that. I've sometimes seen people like walk by and just take grapes and then just keep walking and not buy grapes. And I'm
Yes.
always just like, oh, that feels very illicit to me.
Okay, Gretch, what is our quotation this week?
This comes from John Updike's essay, Why Write? He observes, the wish to make collections, to assemble sets, is surely a deep urge of the human mind in its playful artistic aspect. As deep, it may be, as the urge to hear a story from beginning to end, or the little ecstasy of extracting resemblances from different things. So, Elizabeth, are you feeling happier?
Yes, I'm feeling happier. Gretch, I might even say I'm feeling more happier. Thank you to Chuck. Bye, Gretch.
Bye, Elizabeth. The best time to start a happiness project is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Elizabeth, the Brock's candy. I have not thought about that in years, and I can just see it in my mind's eye, those bins and the metal scoop and the plastic bags. But we never got it much, did we?
No, but sometimes I can remember it kind of melting in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Remember those striped ones that had the coconut? They were like pink and brown and white.
Yes, I do.
From the Onward Project.